Hey guys, thanks for the comments. I appreciate it. Someone mentioned to me that that I missed a point with the releasing of the tapes in my last video, and I actually checked that out. Thank you. And it does look like it's been tampered with, and I think that's just proves the point even more, right? So that's been it's pretty crazy, how you can, they don't release it for years, and all of a sudden they do release it, and it seems to be tampered with. It's almost as if they were just trying to get the technology correct to make it look as as good as possible. So, but anyway, this is my third video. I'm going to talk about the third part of the first Zeitgeist film, which is called "Don't Mind the Men Behind the Curtain." I told you a little bit last video that it's a very interesting title, but I'm going to jump right into it. And the first part I'm actually going to talk about is how I could describe this section, which is called I'm going to use the word manipulation. And it's unfortunate because it really shows you how manipulated how you can think one way and it's actually a completely different way. Okay, and it's actually I'm going to describe it with money, and then there's the two major wars, the Vietnam War, and also 9/11, and how they're all linked, and how you all have been taught, and through media you've understood that it's one way. That you understand it, that it's that it was a bad thing, and and they on the other side are the bad guys, and we are the good guys, like I mentioned in the last video. And how they really drill that into your brain. Okay, so what I'm going to start talking about is money. The second Zeitgeist film, it's called Zeitgeist Addendum, and it's all about money, how money's created, how it's manipulated, where it gets its value from, and how it all works. And this part, it actually talks about it just a little bit. I'm not going to go into any detail. However, what it does say is how money is created, how it was actually changed, and when they decided to not have anything to back the dollar up, that's when they decided that they could print a lot more of that money. They kind of explain it like money is debt and debt is money, and when you make money, when you actually create the money, you will sell it, or people would buy it at interest. So basically, you would always have more debt than you would have money, right? So in this case, they're talking about the American bank, which is the Federal Reserve Bank, and they're talking about how it's created. When the government wants to borrow money from the Federal Reserve Bank, they borrow it at interest, which means that you're constantly paying the money back to the Federal Reserve, because apparently it's not a bank that it's not even American. It's a bank with laws that were created by bankers. But anyway, my whole point about this was about the controlling of money and what is the most important thing. And as you know, business is all about money, and when you watch this film, you'll realize what the biggest business in the world actually is, and it's not tourism or whatever you think is huge. It's actually war. War is the biggest business that there is. So this, like I said, it's talking about manipulation. And when people are going to go to war, they are going to war in a certain mindset. But when you see the actual reality of it, they've been completely manipulated. Okay, so it sounds kind of complicated, but I'll clarify. So the first war, basically, if you guys have ever heard of the Lusitania, they discuss it very thoroughly in this part. And basically, this is the bottom line. The bottom line is there was a war going on. The U.S. wasn't involved, and they know that if they could be brought into war, they would be able to borrow more money from the Federal Reserve in order for them so they can create money, and or borrow more money so they can create more business out of the war. So this is what happened. So basically they had Lusitania, and they were going to, they put a bunch of people on it, and even sent a warning out saying that even if you were to go on the Lusitania, it's potentially dangerous because it was going to be traveling through the war zone. And so they did that purposefully, and what happened was it did get hit by German bombers, and basically they I think 1,200 people died. So it was a big, tragedy for the U.S., and it was a big enough thing for getting people in the U.S. to actually sign up for war. And as soon as they were in war, like I said, they borrowed money from the Federal Reserve, and they decided to continue, or expand their business. And so it was all about making money. And in the First World War, some people that were behind the Federal Reserve, there was the Rockefellers. That's who they mentioned. And out of that, there's a lot of people that died out of the war. And but the Rockefellers, they made $200 million at the time, which it turns out to be in the billions nowadays. So it gives you an example of how the manipulation was. People don't know what was behind the Lusitania, but through media and convincing and manipulation and getting people to believe and go all patriotic to go support, that's the biggest thing. So and it worked, right? So then you have the Second World War, and basically the U.S. wanted to be involved in that as well, because they just wanted to get back to business as usual, and they knew that it's the best way to make money. And by the way, they were doing these things because they were coming out of they created the Depression in the 20s, and then they created the Great Depression in the 30s. So they did these things on purpose to coincide with the wars, and so they would have a good enough like a progression for people to realize that if they want to go off to war, they can make money and stuff like that. But basically, they're going in there to die because they don't really care about it. They just care about the business that's created behind it. So it's absolutely astonishing. So the Second World War was the Pearl Harbor. And what the people don't know, because everyone knows the story of Pearl Harbor, what the people don't know is that the Americans provoked the Japanese to carry them into war. There was actually a warning that I believe some generals, or the army officials or whatever, they waived, because before, for months at a time, they decided to do things that would piss off the Japanese, because they wanted to provoke them to go into war. They were doing trading with China and Britain as well, and apparently they were enemies with the Japanese at the time. So they were doing things that would piss them off. They froze their assets. It's just terrible what they did, but they did it on purpose because they wanted their end result was to be in war. But of course, they didn't want to look like the aggressors. So they wanted to provoke them to do the first hit, and that's exactly what happened. So Pearl Harbor had it. They did Pearl Harbor, and this is an interesting fact. They said that before Pearl Harbor, 83% of the American population did not want to enter the war, and after Pearl Harbor, 1 million men signed up. So it is incredible where you get your patriotism from. You think that, if I was to ask you, what are you patriotic about? Like, what exactly are you patriotic about? Your country is the U.S. is free. Canada is free, to an extent, but there really is no democracy. You're very controlled, So it really makes you wonder after you get, your eyes get open to some certain things, because you get so brainwashed about the whole patriotism and why we went to war, and the Americans were the winners and everything, and it's absolutely terrible. The third war was the Vietnamese War, Vietnam, and they called it the Gulf of Tonkin incident.